Oops. What's up, everybody? Hold on one second. I have a little bit of a thing I'm trying to organize, and the dog's hitting everything. That's not what I'm trying to do. Things are changing on me here. Trying to get everything situated. I apologize for the noise. Oops, we got things happening. Give me 1 second so I can get it fixed. Once I get it fixed, we can go. I know this is unprofessional. I don't care. Just join in and get there. All right, got it all fixed. I was having some things were like connecting wrong and not doing what they're supposed to do, so I didn't want anybody to mess up. Anyway, welcome back to another episode of Martial Arts Movie Mondays. I know I was supposed to be back last week for part 2 of the Bloodfist series, but I had an art deadline that had to get done, so it kind of took precedent of what's going on. Move that a little bit out of my way. If you've never seen this show before, it's basically I take a deep dive into my martial arts movie collection. It's a varying between movies that may have come out that week, movies that may have been out for years and years and years. Some are just my favorites. I just grab one, I watch it. This is a 2-part episode. This is part 2 that I've been wanting to do for quite a while from one of my favorite martial artists, Don the Dragon Wilson, in his Bloodfist series. There's actually, 8? Yeah, 8 movies in the series with Don. There's actually another one called Bloodfist 2050. I believe that's what it's called. I believe it's Matt Mullins. Don Wilson is not in that one to my knowledge, so I'm not adding that as part of the franchise. I'm just doing the straight up Don the Dragon Wilson movies. And let me tell you a little bit about the series before we dive into it. If you've never watched the show, though, I not only talk about the movies, I also talk about how it may have influenced my martial arts career, my martial arts training, as well as the movies themselves. So we're going to kind of dive into that. Part 1 delved a lot into the Bloodfist series and its formation a little bit, but I want to kind of recap that in case you're just joining this one. So essentially, Bloodfist is a martial arts series that was started by Roger Corman. If you don't know who Roger Corman is, go look him up. He was huge with a lot of the lower budget action flicks, but he did a lot of old Vincent Price movies and stuff as well. He's had an amazing career. He basically, Don Wilson started in the original Bloodfist. Then they did Bloodfist 2, and those 2 movies were connected. It was the same character, whatever. And then the series kind of goes off the rails, and instead of being a continuation of the same character, it's just a different action / martial arts flick starring Don the Dragon Wilson. So it's Bloodfist in name alone. It became the brand Don the Dragon Wilson, and Bloodfist became a brand that were together, not a continuing story. So you have to understand that. So you can technically, any of these movies past part 2, you can watch them as an individual movie. You can take the subtitle title. So like say Bloodfist 5, Human Target. They could have just called it Human Target. We have this one. Ground Zero could have just been called Ground Zero. And who knows, they very well probably were scripts that were touted that, and they just said, let's slap the Bloodfist logo on it because it's a selling point. It became a thing and genius marketing. So in the last episode, we talked about the first 4. This episode, we're going to talk about the next 4. So my introduction to Bloodfist came from a video store that I used to go to when I was a kid or a young man. And I was in martial arts, and I was renting every single martial arts movie that came out. And the guy there, and I told this story already, so I apologize if you already heard it. The guy there knew that. We talked all the time when I came in there. We talked about martial arts. I believe he was a martial artist, or at least he said he was. We talked about martial arts stuff. He would always tell me, hey, we got this new martial arts flick in. And essentially, he started giving me the VHS screeners. They were store screeners. They weren't meant to be like press review screeners necessarily. They were these store screeners, and they would send them to the stores to watch the film and decide how many they wanted to order. So it was kind of a promotional copy. And he started giving me those, a lot of them to keep, but for me to go home, watch it, come back and tell him if I liked it, how many you should order, all that kind of stuff. I'm pretty sure he didn't take care of anything about how many I wanted him to order or anything like that. And I honestly don't remember ever telling him very many times how many to order. He really just, I think, wanted to know what I thought of the movie and he was just trying to hook this kid up who spent so much money in his store and knew what I loved. But what's funny is Bloodfist was one of the first ones that I got a press screener, if you will, a store screener copy, and in turn gave him a review. So this series is kind of the reason this show exists today. I got the movie over time. Obviously, I kept watching movies. I love movies. I love watching movies. But then obviously it shifted into reviewing movies and what we do now. So we have our website, HollywoodMatrimony.com, and we have the show and our other shows and everything else. So I owe a lot to Bloodfist, not just from my love of films, but making me the press guy, and it had some martial arts impacts. So if you don't know Don the Dragon Wilson, he's an 11-time real life kickboxing champion. He did a ton of straight-to-video, home entertainment, martial arts action flicks. He was in some big budget stuff as well, whether it was small cameos or bigger parts. I believe he was in Say Anything. I believe that's what it was, where he's like the kickboxing instructor or boxing partner with John Cusack. He's in Batman Forever as like the leader of the thugs that come up and I think they're fighting Robin, and they're all on neon and fluorescent. He's the main one that comes up, and I just lost my mind when he showed up. So he's done a lot of stuff, but he's a legit kickboxer, super great guy. I've had the luxury of not only interviewing, but become friends with his brother, and little friends with Don. I've talked to Don a bunch of times, but I became friends with his brother and business acquaintances. They have a clothing line called Traditions, which is this shirt. This one's probably not the best one we're on a show where I have a big table in front of me, because it's actually Don. It's actually Don on the shirt. So I decided to wear it today. I had another one that I wore last time. But they have a clothing line. It's Cynthia Rothrock's clothing line. It's martial arts themed shirts for martial artists. It's a great clothing line. Traditions with a Z. In fact, I was a distributor for them for a while. I had to back off it because I just didn't have the time and stuff to be able to focus on it. Hopefully, I'll be coming back soon, though. Anyway, so let's dive into Bloodfist. So today, we talked about the last four, or the first four in the last film. So this time we're diving in to the final four of this franchise, and kind of where the story goes and what's good, what's bad, and how it works. So in part 5, and I got to look at it just to remind myself what's what. Part 5, which is Human Target, I'm going to bring you the synopsis for each one. So this one, Don Wilson stars as an undercover FBI agent, Jim Roth, in a sole attempt to unravel an international arms deal. Ambushed and left for dead, Roth's memory is erased. Unable to contact the FBI, he's assumed a double agent. Now both sides want him silenced permanently. And we'll just leave it at that. This is the one that was interesting. It reminded me a little bit at the beginning of Hitman, a Chuck Norris movie that I'll talk about eventually, that I really dug, where Chuck Norris shows up. He's got long hair. He gets killed at the beginning. So do you think? That's kind of what this is Don Wilson has this super long, crazy hair, and he gets shot and left for dead, but he survives, but now he's got an amnesia. So it's a pretty stereotypical, most of these movies are stereotypical 80s action flicks. What year did this one come out? This one came out 1994, so this is already shifted into the 90s at this point. But that whole genre back in the day, the one-liners and the kind of straightforward. What I will say is, one of the things that was interesting to me with this series is it seems like, when Don Wilson started the films, he wasn't an actor. He was a kickboxer. And I believe I heard a story, or he mentioned to me when we interviewed one time, that Chuck Norris is one of the people that encouraged him to get into it. Chuck Norris was the same thing. He was a kickboxer, martial artist first, and then became an actor. Don Wilson has slowly had gotten better as an actor through this series, but it's funny because most of the supporting cast, not so much. So some of these don't have the greatest performances by the supporting cast, but there are some really great performances. I'm not great, but there's some good performances around, and they're tolerable for what you're watching. But Don, actually, I personally think he steadily got better with the practice and was taking it seriously. Obviously, it wasn't just collecting a paycheck. He seemed to be really trying to hone his craft. And even though these films are not my favorites in the series, I think he is better in them in the acting side of it. Now, with this first one, with part 5, Human Target, there's a lot of the martial arts action. You get a lot of the stuff. There's a lot of shootouts and whatnot. It actually still works. It's got everything you want in the flicks. nothing fully stands out, but it is that normal. You've seen it 100 times before with the. Can't remember anything. One people are telling this, one people telling this. What I did like is Steve James. I believe that's this one. Let me double check. I don't want to lie. Yes, Steve James shows up in this one. If you don't know Steve James, he's rest in peace. He was a martial artist actor as well. He's most known for the American Ninja series, which I think we'll probably do an episode about that. But he was the African American actor alongside Michael Dudikoff, who was always awesome, big bulky dude. He kind of had a kung fu vibe. I believe he even showed up in I'm Gonna Get You Sucker, doing the same kind of kung fu character. He shows up in this. Totally forgot he was in this. So when I watched it, I was really excited. I'm like, oh my God, there's the late great Steve James. He's got a great role in this. It seems too short, but there's a reason for it to see later on. But there's some good fights. There's some interesting twists. There's an opening shot that's setting up something before we lead to Wilson getting shot. And then it interestingly enough goes back and shows that sequence. And so it's very clever the way they shot it. So then we dived into the next one, Bloodfist 6, Ground Zero. This one we get into a little more of a die-hard military-esque type situation. This time he is, This time he's not just fighting for himself. He stars as Nick Corrigan, who must battle terrorists intent on destroying the world. They have a nuclear missile aimed straight at New York, and they'll use it. They'll take everything Corrigan has to avert total destruction. So it says on here, it's a tradition of Die Hard and Under Siege. It is very much that. Essentially, these guys break into this military base thing. They're trying to get the codes to launch rockets, which seemed to be the thing back in that 80s and 90s, to always try to launch a missile somewhere and destroy something. And Don Wilson is the unknown soldier they didn't know was there, and he's the only one that can save him, but he's all alone, and the government doesn't want to help him out, but he's got one person willing to help him. It's very Die Hard, but in a military base. It's another one that has, I actually dig this one. The villains and the characters in it are pretty cheese, but Don I thought was really good in this one. I like the vibe of it, because it's just straight up, you know what you're getting kind of action. There's a little bit of silly setups on certain things, but the villain's a little bit over the top. But Don, again, I thought was getting better. There's plenty of martial arts stuff in it, a lot of shootouts, twists and turns. There's even a moment that's very much like Die Hard, where the guy when McClane gives the other guy the gun, but it's actually unloaded, and they do the same exact scene. So that you could tell when whoever wrote the movie, they were putting a lot of homage takeaways from that movie into this movie, and it worked. The next one, Bloodfist 7, Manhunt. And this one, he is on the run with no law to turn to but the law of survival. I love these old silly catchphrases. When he rescues a beautiful woman from a gang of lowlifes, he gets to tangle the web of police corruption and murder he didn't commit. Now a fugitive from the law with no place to hide. It's a race against time to put together the truth and get even with the cops who want him dead. This one is another one of those. It's got a lot of twists and turns. Is it this one that he showed back up? Yeah, I think so. I don't remember. I believe it's this one. But anyway, he... hold on, I'm looking at something. Oh, it's different. Anyway, this time around, it's a lot of the same. The police officers don't really know who's telling the truth. He can't prove his innocence. He's this and he's that, and so he's running around and he's trying to fight back. And there's a mysterious lady who's on his side. She's not on his side, and then there's a twist storyline. So again, this one has martial arts in it, but it seemed as these go along, it seemed like there was less martial arts fighting and more of the gunplay, which seemed to be pretty par for the course for almost all these action stars. Not because, I don't think it's always because like they can't do stuff anymore, because obviously Don can still do stuff even now, but I think it became more about not only trying to set the characters up, because it's funny, is every movie that comes out, for the most part, not just these, but the movies back then, every guy used to be military, used to be special forces, but now they're living a normal life and all that kind of stuff happens. In this case, guys just run around, he's trying to survive. The twists and turns with the girl character, you don't know who's what, and there's a lot of very convenient situations. It was a decent one. It wasn't one of my favorites, but it was decent. But it did have some decent fights as well, as along with moving into a lot of shooting. The final one, Bloodfist 8, which is what, Hard Way Out. This one is a little of a mixed bag, and I'll explain to you why in a second. It says everyone knows Rick Cohen is a shy, reclusive math teacher, and even his son Chris thinks he's a hopeless nerd. That is until Rick single-handedly defeats a team of assassins sent to kill both him and his son. Chris then discovers the truth about his father. What I tell you, Rick was once a CIA operative, and now his past has come back to haunt him. So that always seems to happen. Every one of these guys is always like some special forces, whatever. But as silly and convenient as that is, they have to have some reason to explain away their sudden ability to kick everyone's ass, whether it's fighting or shooting or all this stuff. So in this one, here's what's kind of weird. The movie starts out as more of a high school drama-ish comedy thing, where you got you find out that him and his son have issues. He's the teacher in his son, one of his son's classes as well. They clearly don't like each other, or the son clearly doesn't like him or has problems. But the son's also dealing with a bully, and somehow has this ability to make stuff. So there's a scene where a guy gets electrocuted by a boombox because it was rigged, and it's really a silly scene. And it's the whole purpose of that scene is to set up a scene later, which is why they did a lot of that stuff. But in this case, it just kind of come off a little silly because the guy's flopping around. It's got electricity coming out that's way more electrical than you would ever see like that. But it's good for some laughs. This one, while it does have martial arts action in it, to me, this one felt like way more of the shootouts than some of the other ones. Those last two, they offer up some fight scenes, and when their fight scenes are there, Don is all in. Don always nails it. But it seems like they really focus more on the guns and the shooting, which I'm fine with that because I love all action. So the Bloodfist series is one of those that has its ups and downs like everyone. But I'm all in. If you got Don Wilson, these movies, it's interesting watching, like him and Chuck Norris were two, and even Cynthia Rothrock. They were all martial arts actors that didn't rely on the wire work. It wasn't about a lot of fancy jumps and twists. Don did a lot of the windmills, jumping sidekick stuff. Chuck Norris did a lot of the jumping sidekick, and that was kind of his big thing outside of the spinning back fist, stuff like this. Don did a lot of turn kicks, side kicks, windmills, and they're always good. They're inside pressing kicks, things like that. But it always made me happier to see these kind of movies that seem like more practical applications of simplistic techniques in an advanced way, as opposed to everything needing to be dynamic. Don't get me wrong. I love watching Tony Jaa, Scott Adkins, and Jet Li and Jackie Chan's and all their flipping and their twistings and whatever. And some of the over top. Jackie Chan's not so much the over the top, as he's a little more of using everything and very impressive. Jet Li's kind of the same way, but he did Into the Wire work. I love all of that stuff, but I like the simple things, that it's not about having to jump and twist and spin and hit you with 13 kicks at the same time. And that stuff's impressive. It's awesome to watch. I do a lot of that stuff myself when I train, but also understanding that what really works in the real world and what doesn't. These movies make a little more sense from that side. Now, don't be wrong. There's so many silly things. Like there's a moment where the guy's about to shoot him. And one of them, he jump and side kicks him somehow before he can shoot the gun. We all know that's probably not accurate. It's going to happen. There's moments where he's fighting 13 people and never gets his butt kicked. It happens, but it's the use of techniques that anybody could technically do if you trained it and practiced it and learned it. It makes you feel connected as a martial artist. Like, I love doing the windmill kicks. So people call them different things, but the windmill kicks, I prefer doing it more of the roundhouse than a crescent kick. But I learned it because of Don the Dragon Wilson. I watched him doing it. We were doing it in class, but I watched him doing it so much that I'm like, I'm going to get this down. And I started doing it. I would do it in some of the combinations that I would see in some of his movies, whether it was these or Ring of Fire or anything else he had done. And I just love them. And he has been one of, if not the biggest influence outside of Ken Kasuke, who was a kid. I was around the same age, watching him at the same time coming up, and I could relate to him on a kid level. But Don was one of those that you know, I was into Chuck Norris and Bruce Lee and all those guys, but for whatever reason, I connected with Don the Dragon Wilson and Cynthia Rothrock with their films when I was younger, and they've stuck with me ever since. And I'm proud to say that I've been able to talk to them and do business with some of them, and still follow them to this day on their medias and get to see what they're doing and promote. And so this series means a lot to me. I am totally aware that not every one of the movies works. These movies are not for everybody. If you don't like some good old-fashioned kind of cheese action, sometimes these movies are not going to work for you. But they work for me, and that's all I care about. All the movies are still available if you can find them. A lot of times you can find some of these, half-price books, things like this, Amazon, something like that. So I think a lot of them are showing up on Amazon TV and stuff like that as well. So do yourself a favor, go check them out. And if you find Bloodfist and you're like, well, I can only find Bloodfist 4, watch it. You don't need to see the other ones. Bloodfist 1 and 2 are the only two that are connected together. All the rest of them are independent films by themselves. They do not connect. Don is playing a different character in every movie. So it's one of the few franchises that you do not have to watch in order. There is no secret connection between them other than some of the actors. There's a guy that I do not remember his name from Mad TV. That's at least what I know him from. He shows up in like 2 or 3 of these movies as an extra background character. So it's always interesting seeing young actors doing different things. And there's a few other young actors that show up that are, some of them are a little bit bigger now. You've seen a lot of stuff. Anyway, I love the Bloodfist series. I'm so happy that I finally got to go through all 8 films. If you've never seen them, check them out. Next week, planning to talk about a Philip Ree movie I'm excited to talk about. It's a not quite an old movie. If you don't know Philip Ree from Best of the Best, we're not talking about Best of the Best. We already did that episode. We're going to talk about a different movie that he directed. That he's also a great guy I had a chance to speak with, and look forward to talk about that movie because it's a great little flick for everybody. It's a family film. All righty. Thank you for joining me. And this is a dream to get to speak about these movies because I love them so much. And this will not be the last time we talk about Don the Dragon Wilson or Cynthia Rothrock on this show. Believe it. One of my rules on this show is I'm only going to talk about a movie that I own typically, so that I have it in my hand. That's kind of the theme. So if I don't own the movie, I can't talk about it. So there's a couple of series that I'm trying to complete. But if you have a movie you want to hear me, a martial arts movie you want to hear me talk about, hear my thoughts on it, hear how it may have impacted me as a martial artist, shoot me a message. Let me know what you want. If I have it, I'll dive into it. If I can find it, I'll buy it. All right. You can never have too many martial arts movies in your collection, good or bad. They exist. Support films. I love you all. I love this series. Thank you, Don Wilson, for changing my life in martial arts and in film. I'm here because of you in this movie, and I thank you very much. Everybody, make sure you go to our website, HollywoodMatrimony.com. We have bunches of giveaways going on, news, movies, reviews. Obviously, movie news has slowed down a little bit, so we haven't had as many updates outside of reviews, but we'll get there. Don't know if we're going to be back for TV Tuesday tomorrow, but hopefully we will. But we'll definitely be back for an all-new episode of Hollywood Matrimony live this Sunday at 7 p.m. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and go check out our Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all the good things. And I will see everybody next time. Remember, keep your hands up. Peace and love.